have been tuning into the live Supreme Court arguments about whether the president actually has the authority to impose tariffs, specifically whether President Trump can put broad, sweeping tariffs in place without getting Congress to sign off first. He's been leaning on a national emergency statute to justify it, and these tariffs are basically the centerpiece of his economic strategy. But from what we've heard so far, things don't look all that promising for the president, who earlier today described these arguments and the ruling that the justices will eventually hand down as life or death. We're going to break down what we've heard up to this point with an excellent panel. Steve Vladeck, I want to start with you. What's your read on all this? And, yes, I know this is deep in the technical weeds of tariff law, but it matters so much more broadly. This is really about presidential authority. Whether Donald Trump actually has as much power as he claims. You know, Dan, it's a critical moment for the court and for the country. We've seen ruling after ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court in cases involving Trump. All right, we need to address what just took place in the Senate because it's basically the final nail in the coffin for Trump's presidency. This is the moment where Trump's entire governing structure effectively collapses. The Senate just cast a bipartisan vote to block several Trump executive orders. Orders they concluded were unconstitutional and beyond the scope of Trump's presidential power. They blocked Trump's directives on unauthorized military deployments. They blocked his orders to freeze SNAP funding because they determined those orders violated federal appropriations law. And they blocked his tariff orders because the Senate decided those orders overstepped Trump's trade authorities. And the Senate didn't just stop there. They passed sweeping reforms designed to make it far harder for Trump to roll out similar executive orders going forward. These reforms forced the White House to notify Congress of executive orders, give Congress fast-track procedures to overturn those orders, and even establish criminal penalties for officials who attempt to carry out executive orders that Congress has nullified. This is unprecedented in American history. Congress has never before moved to directly block a president's executive orders while also writing legislation to restrict a president's ability to issue them. Trump is losing Congress. He's losing the Senate. He's losing the House. His administration is coming apart at the seams. His presidency isn't merely in jeopardy, it is effectively over. Trump is raging on Truth Social, calling the Senate's actions a witch hunt. But he knows he lost. He knows this is the end of his presidency. Quick pause before we go deeper. Mainstream media can't always be relied on. That's why we built Pump Politics. For real stories, real context, no corporate filter. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, hop onto our Free newsletter. We deliver the news straight to your inbox every day. Links in the description. And if you want to support this work, join our community. Let's get back to the video. This is why this moment is so huge. Politically, tariffs are central to Trump's foreign policy vision. Legally, what attorneys call doctrinally, it sends a massive signal about where the court is likely headed with the other Trump-related cases making their way up the pipeline. Exactly. And Laura, the hints we've gotten based on the justices' questioning seem loud and incredibly unfavorable for President Trump. Right out of the gate, they were grilling the arguments that claimed he held this power. And here's why: just about a year ago, the court was already saying, here's what's completely astonishing about what the Senate just did and why it's such a catastrophic blow to Trump's presidency. The Senate isn't merely saying Trump's executive orders are misguided. They're saying those orders violate the Constitution. They're declaring that Trump exceeded his presidential authority and broke the law by issuing them. And then they back that up with legislation with structural reforms that will make it harder for Trump to repeat those actions in the future. This isn't political disagreement. This is Congress effectively warning that Trump is acting like a dictator and that he's ignoring constitutional limits on presidential power. Senators explicitly warned on the Senate floor about the danger of executive dictatorship. They argued Trump was attempting to govern like an autocrat and that Congress had to step in to stop him before he could harm the Constitution or the rule of law. And what intensifies the significance of this moment is that it's bipartisan. Republicans joined Democrats in blocking Trump's orders. Republicans voted for the reforms that restrict Trump's executive authority. When members of both parties agree a president's executive orders are illegal, that's when you know the president is in extraordinary trouble. That's when you know he's lost Congress completely. Trump assumed Republicans would always stand by him no matter what. But now, Republicans are lining up beside Democrats to shut down Trump's executive actions. It's a direct repudiation from his own party, a statement that he cannot be trusted with the power he's trying to wield. The criminal penalty provisions are particularly jaw-dropping. If Trump or his officials attempt to implement executive orders that Congress has overturned, those officials could face criminal charges. This means Trump's own team will hesitate, even refuse to follow his directives if doing so risks legal exposure. That effectively freezes Trump's ability to exercise executive power because his people won't carry out orders that could land them in court. The federal judiciary ruling that Trump's military deployments exceeded his commander-in-chief authority also reinforces Congress's stance. The courts said Trump could not deploy troops unilaterally in the ways he attempted. And now Congress is echoing that ruling, codifying limits on Trump's military powers moving forward. This is a coordinated effort, Congress and the courts pushing back simultaneously against Trump's attempts to stretch executive authority. Let's walk through the specific executive orders the Senate blocked and why each one is such a severe blow. On military deployments, Trump issued orders that judges said violated constitutional limits on presidential war powers. The Senate reviewed the same issue and agreed. They blocked the orders and required Congress to approve future deployments. On SNAP funding, Trump tried to freeze food assistance funding through executive order even though Congress controls appropriations. The Senate blocked the freeze and reaffirmed that Trump cannot unilaterally cut funding Congress has authorized. On tariffs, Trump attempted to impose tariffs through emergency authority in ways Congress determined exceeded his trade powers. The Senate blocked those orders too and reasserted Congress's constitutional role in regulating commerce. The theme across all of these is the same. Trump attempted to use executive action to do things the Constitution assigns to Congress: spending, regulating commerce, and approving military actions. Congress is pushing back and saying no. Now let's talk about the reforms the Senate enacted, because these will shape presidential power long after Trump. Presidents must now notify Congress when they issue executive orders. Congress can now nullify executive orders through a fast-track vote. Emergency powers now automatically expire unless Congress renews them. These changes give Congress a direct veto over presidential action, something we've never seen at this level. This fundamentally reshapes the balance of power between the branches. Trump thought he could govern by executive fiat, but Congress is now demonstrating it can rapidly override him, and with criminal penalties for implementing voided orders. His own administration will be afraid to carry out directives Congress opposes. Trump's presidency is effectively boxed in. He's stuck. He can't advance his agenda through executive action, and he can't move it through legislation because he's lost Congress. Project 2025? This Senate action makes that nearly impossible to implement. Everything Trump tries to do through executive action can now be stopped by Congress almost immediately. This Senate blockade is essentially the moment Trump's presidency collapses. He's been losing fights in the courts. He's been losing allies within his own party. Cabinet turmoil, legal crises, slipping approval, open rebellion in the House, and now a complete congressional shutdown of his executive authority. What happens next? Trump will likely try to challenge these reforms in court, but courts have already been rejecting his broad claims of executive power. Congress will likely continue nullifying his orders as fast as he issues them. His administration will fracture as officials refuse to carry out orders that risk criminal consequences. His approval ratings will sink further as it becomes clear he can't get anything done. The bottom line, Congress has voted on a bipartisan basis to block Trump's executive orders and drastically reduce his presidential authority. Congress now has the tools to nullify his executive actions swiftly. Trump is unable to govern through executive action. Trump is unable to govern through legislation. Trump has lost Congress entirely. This Senate blockade marks the true end of Trump's presidency as a functioning administration. He may still hold the title of president for another year and a half, but his governing power is gone. He is essentially a powerless, lame duck figurehead. His presidency is, for all practical purposes, over.